And up next, we have, okay, good. Next up, we have Karen and Katrina Gimbel from Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Karen fished for 3 seasons, herring and salmon in Bristol Bay, out of Dillingham, 1980 to 83. And Katrina fished her first season last year was her first season. So to the stage, let's welcome Karen and Katrina.
Hello all. I've heard about this event for many, many years. Some of my friends have, and my family have performed. It's delightful to be here, and my first husband, the father of both my daughters who are here, introduced himself to me at a wedding where we were both there and hadn't met, but our best friends were getting married. And we made eye contact for a long time before he came up to me and said, "So, you want to learn how to pick fish?" And I said, "Yes." And so that's the story. We were married for a short amount of time, enough to have 2 amazing daughters. And my first poem is my recollections of those 3 phenomenal years spent on a fishing boat in Bristol Bay. What I carry from my time salmon fishing in Alaska in 13 short verses. 1, the knowledge of sea legs, keeping balance, going with the motion of the boat, the waves, anticipating the next move, bent knees to absorb abrupt, unanticipated shifts. 2, a sense of navigating water, so very different than land. Learning to keep your eye on a fixed point of land and not worrying about straight lines or a map. Working with currents and tides and wind. Depth sounding. A feel for the area after checking the charts for known sandbars or shallows. And then paying close attention to all the other clues that water surfaces and movements speak to what's going on under the surface. But then just keeping the eye on that landmark and knowing you'll get there if you do. 3, not worrying about how many fresh fruits or veggies you've eaten in the last week, and tolerating some pretty funky states of that fresh produce. Sometimes I think about this when I'm tossing something into the compost because it's a little off. How many times I would have eaten such vegetables? Heck, I'd even been happy to purchase them in such a condition in markets of the super small towns while out fishing for months in coastal Alaska. 4, unforgettable and not to be missed, that one crazy, oily mouthful of authentic agudak, meaning something mixed. This one made with seal blubber and berries. Watching my friend mix it with her hands mightily and quickly in a way we might use a mixer to whip cream. 5, the company of giant whales, ocean denizens, next to our tiny boat, learning to recognize them by the shape of their backs and dorsal fins, distinguishing their blow from ocean spray, watching them dive, sometimes delighting in seeing their tails, another identifier. Beautiful descriptive names, blue whale, gray whale, humpback whale, and some fun to say, minke, beluga, orca. 6, an appreciation for knots and people who know them. If you know when to use which knot and how to tie it well, you can stay safe and also keep others from harm. 7, always carrying along at least these identification books: Alaska berries, Alaska mammals, Alaska whales, Alaska birds. This was way before Google. 8, an appreciation for the phases of the moon and how those phases influence tides, how winds and storms can be disasters if you've not tied everything down well, prepared for turbulence created by combinations of storms, tides, and currents. 9, understanding that a shower every day or even every few days is a luxury, an antidote to our culture's fetish for cleanliness. 10, a deep understanding of how, under these conditions of cold, constant dampness, and minimal clothing options, wearing wool can save your life. 11, standing by the two-way radio to catch updates on the fishery, announcements, gossip, anything. 12, knowing what the mind and body are capable of, especially under life-threatening conditions, but also simply when the summer sun doesn't set and your body hasn't a clue to know when to be tired. 13, 2 most precious daughters, sisters who are now salmon fishers, having worked together on the boat their dad and I outfitted and worked on together before they were born. Salmon sisters in the truest sense. They are the most amazing and the best part of my Alaska story. Thank you. This one is in memory of the fishermen who are no longer with us. Here now. Carefully applying eyeliner, I'm thinking, one day this skin, right here, will be compost. He had a coffin a lot nicer than you would want, she said. And we stood for a long time while they lowered the coffin and completely covered it with dirt, then sod, as if no one had ever been here. Driving north on the freeway, empty bags blowing against traffic. Real road signs startle me with mindfulness instructions. First one, arrow in almost a full circle, Brotherhood Way. The other, arrow pointing off as if to a far horizon, Freedom Boulevard. And this is my last one, before Katrina gets on stage. Arriving home again. We find our way by feel and ancient memory, crisscrossing the river on high bridges, at each new place, arriving home again. There, the empty house where grandparents lived. Here, the quiet picnic by their headstones. We find our way by feel and ancient memory. Now, the highway so familiar traveled, still everything changing all the time. At each new place, arriving home again. Knowing by sensing, endings are beginnings. Holding hands when talking is impossible. We find our way by feel and ancient memory. We poets, counting syllables on fingers, pulling meaning up through sludge of thought, at each new place, arriving home again. Letting all things go, as they tend to do, sometimes easier, others challenging. We find our way by feel and ancient memory, at each new place, arriving home again. Thank you.
This summer, I had the exquisite pleasure of being the greenhorn on the boat just mentioned by my mother, with my sister as captain, who's fished since she was 16, and her husband, my brother-in-law, as deck boss, both very seasoned, so I was honored that they took me on. We had our father's ashes on the boat. Thought we'd do it on the first day, but a moment didn't show up actually until the last day of fishing, and we were on our way back to Dillingham on our last day, and we finally found a moment to scatter my father's ashes. We anchored up at Nushagak Point, and that's the inspiration for where my first poem comes from. Scattering my father's ashes at Nushagak Point. How many times has this rigid aluminum body rested here? How many times even has it nudged up against one of these belugas, one of their sleek white bodies? Every welded seam of this vessel holds within it my father, his spirit, also his hands, also the hours of his life. He is a part of this boat, as he is now a part of these whales, continuing from body to body to body. Thank you. For all the men who've never lost their sea legs and their wives, I found myself in the body of a bird flying over the sea, and I saw the beauty he loves more than me. The mistress more alluring than any siren, the mistress every fishwife knows and loathes, even through the thickness of her love. I saw her depths, her exquisite fury, her abundant swells, her seductive rhythm, her irresistible pull, and her fierce indifference that keeps a million men never home for any full year of their lives, never without sea legs. This kind of endurance. I was born to this kind of endurance, these cold feet, this hard labor, these distant men. I am accustomed to the absence of warmth, comfort, closeness. I was born to this kind of endurance, this toughening, this waiting, this longing. Thank you.